Hi, good morning, and welcome to a Magic webinar. We run frequent webinars, and it's done on a fortnightly basis. We choose different topics, and for this week, we're going to be talking about integrating multiple systems through process orchestration. For the purposes of sound quality, all voices will be muted, but I do encourage you to please type in any questions at any time during the broadcast, and we will try and get to those questions at the end. So today I'm going to be joined with Richard, who is one of our technical architects, and he's going to be showing a live demo of Magic Software's components, and I'm going to be talking a little bit about the concepts of integrating multiple systems together. Right, so if I can get to my next screen, we can start. Right, so I'm going to, this is just a very high-level view. I've been warned by my marketing team not to display any particular text, so I'm trying to be as graphic as possible in terms of trying to explain the concepts that we're providing. So firstly, when you think of any type of organization, a company always grows, hopefully, and it grows through acquisition, employing new people, acquiring new systems. So that's all very good and well as an organization gets larger. And everyone seems happy and everything seems to be running smoothly, but there's a lot to be considered in the background, all the existing systems that are currently running and how to manage all of those existing systems. So think of any type of organization. This might be manufacturing, it might be finance, healthcare. Any type of organization has got multiple systems. So for example, here we've got a headquarters, and that headquarters has got a warehouse. Then they've got suppliers and different branches, and ultimately, of course, they've got the customers that are receiving the products or services. And it's always the customer that's the most important part of the whole process. So if you think of the actual business processes can be quite simple in terms of what needs to be done within the organization to turn around things like ordering new stock, creating invoices. But in order to achieve those, the back-end systems really need to talk to each other. And as organizations grow, it becomes more and more difficult to manage those back-end systems. Okay, so think of it from the customer perspective. In some type of organization where products are being sold over the web, a customer would log on to your website, they would order a product, they type in the product name, the quantity, order it, press enter, and 5 days later the package arrives. Very simple, fantastic. But there it needs to be passed into a CRM system, which is in a local office. Then that's going to have to call stock, which is sitting in the cloud from the warehouse management system, and also relaying all of that information back into an ERP, which is back in the head office. So these are the type of business processes that need to be considered, and of course they're crossing over into multiple different types of systems. So these systems, of course, this is an example where it could be Magento running in the cloud. The warehouse could be running on Oracle. SAP could be the CRM. The ERP, and Dynamics could be the CRM system. So these are all completely different systems. They've all come from different backgrounds. They've grown differently, different APIs. The fields are different, and the way of actually communicating with them is also very different. It takes specific skills for each of these systems in order to use them, and then, of course, to integrate between these different systems. It's always a challenge, and it's a challenge that we see on a daily basis with organizations. Okay, so there are a lot of approaches in terms of trying to manage that cross-integration between the different systems. So what is the best approach? Well, the way we see it is that the best possible approach is to orchestrate the integration using the business processes. which means clearly defining and understanding what your business processes are, and then being able to orchestrate them. So how do we get to this point, and what does it really mean? Well, here is an example of different systems. Now, more and more organizations today are becoming a lot more customer-centric, which means that the CRM is gaining a lot more control. Historically, it's always been typically an ERP system, which has been the heart of the system. Nowadays, CRM systems are becoming more powerful, and the ERPs are being scaled down with more information being put into the CRM system. Now, there's many CRM solutions out there today that are able to handle business processes. So you think of some of the major ones like Sugar, Salesforce, Dynamics. They're all very well developed, and they're all able to handle the business processes, but it's important to set up that business process layer in order for them to have access to that data. So in order to get to that business process layer, you do need an integration framework that's going to be the glue between all those different systems, but not just the data, but the actual business processes between those systems. In this example, let's talk about Salesforce, a very common CRM system that is well used in the marketplace. It could be any CRM solution, though, that you may have or be considering. It may even be some type of bespoke solution that you've developed. So here again, a different view of the different types of systems in the organization. All these systems are monolithic, and the data flows down from one system into another. So for example, a system like the finance Sage system, the user would capture the customer number, the name, the details, provide an invoice number, the details for that particular invoice, the products, and then generate the invoice and send it out to the customer. So that's how each of these systems operates on an individual basis. They've all got their own functionality. But today in any organization, the business flow has to flow not just down from each system, but across the systems. So this is an example process where it's flowing between the systems. So an example business process starting at the CRM system, flowing into the finance, which is then picking up customer details from the CRM, then flowing back into logistics, into different types of systems, being able to share the information and pass that information across. It may be that you've identified particular systems that are the master data, but the master data may be shared, and typically that's shared between different systems. Now, the way of really achieving this orchestration is to consider, as I said, these business processes and be able to identify them. Now, these business processes, for this particular business process, it may be an automated process where you've got some level of point-to-point integration that's been developed already by your development team. But it could also be some type of manual action, so such as picking up a sheet of paper, walking over to a fellow colleague to capture that data into their system. Now, you're probably grinning for now for one of two reasons. Either you've identified with a process that's happening in your organization at the moment, or you're probably thinking, surely that doesn't really happen today, does it? Well, it's very common. That type of manual process is used in just about every organization, and that's where streamlining between multiple applications can really help and modernize applications and organizations and bring organizations to become a lot more customer-centric and get that 360-degree view that all organizations strive towards. So in terms of looking at this particular business process, as the business process flows across each application, it creates different actions. So at every point, that's an action point as it crosses between these different systems. So what we say is try and capture those particular action points into a business process layer. Okay, so once you can put those action points into a business process layer, then they become a lot more powerful. Because at that stage, once you've got that business process layer and all of those action points, you can then take that information and expose it in so many different ways. Those business processes now become actual objects, and you can have a function there. So those functions can then be reused. They can be deployed to different applications. So even if you do start with a new application, you can still take that existing logic or those business functions and apply it. You can apply it to multiple branches. But the important point here is that you've defined the logic, the business processes, and we're not talking about data anymore, we're talking about business functions that can be exposed in a multitude of different ways. One good example, just one example of how they can be exposed is consider mobilizing. Mobilization is something that so many organizations today are talking about. So with this integration framework in place, allowing those business processes to be exposed, you can easily take that and apply it to a mobile strategy. So in this example, it may be that you're starting a project, you're creating forms based on the particular logic that you've already created. You generate an application, do some simulation of it, testing, making sure that it works correctly according to the individual users, and then deploy it. So we're talking about mobilizing particular business functions that are in the organization, which means you're able to access any type of information across any type of system that's being used within the organization. And that steps back towards the actual business processes that were originally defined. So consider this concept of having that business process and exposing all of that data to a mobile environment. What you can get is a desktop environment. So a desktop will allow your users to be able to view any of that information the way that they want. So you can have multiple different types of views. And what we're moving towards here is empowering end users to be able to view data rather than being limited by what IT determine users are allowed to see. This approach really allows individual users to be able to access information the way that they want, which is important in today's world, especially when you think of tablet devices. So a tablet device, a user may want information exposed in different ways compared to a mobile phone. But this approach allows you to be able to expose anything in a way that is interactive, not just read-only, but it's interactive on any type of environment to any channel. Of course, to get to this level, you still need that basic integration framework that's going to allow those business processes to be exposed. Okay, so that's the concept of what I really wanted to put across to you today in terms of implementing some type of framework technology. I'm going to now hand over to Richard, who's going to be doing a demo of our actual integration platform, and you'll be seeing data being passed across different systems. Richard will explain the particular systems that he's chosen for the purposes of the demo today, but essentially you're going to be seeing live data in live systems being passed across. So at this stage, I'm going to hand control over to Richard, and he will take over from here.
So good morning. So what I'm going to show you is a integration project that are integrating account data between Dynamics CRM, which is the Microsoft CRM system, Microsoft SharePoint, and also JD Edwards, which is an ERP system. So I have already prepared an account in Dynamics CRM. I'm going to create this account. It's called Multiple Systems Webinar, and I filled in a few details in here, and I'm just going to click Save. And now that account has been created in here. You see there, Multiple Systems Webinar. And what I now expect to see is that I have a SharePoint contact list, and I expect this contact to, this account details to show up in this contact detail. And I also expect a new record being created in JD AdWords Enterprise 1. So at this point, I'm just waiting for the record to come across, and it has already. So I'm just going to check here which what the response was from JD AdWords. So I get an account or a number, and I got that number here. So now if I go back into my JD environment, I can basically look at that number, and as you can see, the address book record has now been created in JD AdWords. And if you look at the actual data, you can see that the address details that I put in the CRM system has been integrated across. Furthermore, if I go back to the account and look at the account details, there is now also a field called ERP reference, which has updated, that the integration platform has updated. And this enables a much smoother integration between multiple systems, because you can take an account data from CRM system and immediately know which record that corresponds to your ERP system. So let's go into the SharePoint list, and if I reload, then I expect that this entry has been showed up twice. And again, it's everything has been coming across as a contact in SharePoint. I'm going to continue, just show you briefly how this has been implemented. So first of all, this is a workflow, and this is scheduled to run every minute. And basically, what it does, the first thing is that it checks an account in CRM, and if there is such an account, it will create a contact and update JD AdWords. Just to give you a flavor of how this works like. Basically, in order to create a record in SharePoint, you just select the entity type list, which operation you want to perform, and then click OK. And then a data map will open. In the source, on the left-hand side, I have the Dynamics CRM account record, and on the destination, the SharePoint component or adapter has already pre-configured how that looks like. So the actual mapping is graphical, and in order to map any field from a source to a destination, you just select the source node and drag that over to the destination and drop it. You can also transform data, multiple sources to one destination, etc. So it's a quite complex piece of software. And the same applies for JD. So creating an account in JD, the same functionality. So I just say which business function you want to run, click OK. Again, there's Dynamics CRM record in the source, and the component for JD has already pre-configured how that business function looks like. And again, it's the same type of mapping that is performed. So regardless of what you're working with, which system you're working with, if it's a database, if it's XML, if it's JD AdWords, you have unified interface when you implement or configure these integration interfaces. I didn't show that in the demo, but we can do the other way around as well. So if I make a change, for example, in JD AdWords, that can then be updated in both SharePoint and Dynamics CRM. So to build these workflows, we have a range of components, and as you can see, we have several application adapters. For an example, we have Sugar CRM, Salesforce, a whole range of SAP systems, JD Edwards, SharePoint, Dynamics CRM, Exchange, Google Docs, etc. So we are capability to integrate with a wide range of technologies and enterprise applications. Thank you. I'm now going to hand this back over to.
Hold on, Richard. Before you hand over, just something you mentioned I wanted to pick up on. At one point you mentioned that this was polling every minute to find a change from the Dynamics. If we were to implement, let's say this was changed to Salesforce to SAP, and how could this be applied in terms of looking at that type of integration? Because these are Dynamics CRM and JDE that you've shown with SharePoint. If it was Salesforce and SAP, in terms of that polling, if we wanted to be able to set this up, that as an opportunity was set to a particular status, is that something that can easily be changed and done? How would you go about doing that in the product?
Yeah, so that would be a trigger. So that would be an external trigger if that would have been Salesforce. Salesforce API and Dynamics CRM API is very different from each other. And in Salesforce, I think the easiest way would probably be to configure the outbound messaging or outbound notification when a new account has been created, and that message from Salesforce would then trigger a process that you have just looked at that would create a record in JD Edwards and create another record in SharePoint. So that would be a different approach to how it would look like.
Okay. I think that's an important point that you mentioned there, that even though the technologies are so different, this approach, and from what I was talking about earlier in terms of looking and creating those business processes, it really means that it doesn't matter what type of system is underlying. This is a framework technology that provides that process integration to any type of system, regardless if it's JDE to SharePoint or Salesforce to SAP. It's the same principles in terms of applying the logic of the tool that can build that business process. So the technology essentially, I suppose, is hidden from the end user. I'd like to open up for any questions at this time. If you do have any questions, then please do type them in the question box. We've got just a couple of minutes that we can take any questions. Let's see, okay, I've got one question coming in here. Okay, so the question that comes up. Okay, so I think this is one for Richard. Richard says, although the integrations that you showed in the demo were fairly basic, you did show 3 different systems working together. So for this particular project, how long does it take to get this set up?
For an experienced architect like myself, this is a matter of days, maybe 2 days, including testing for doing something like this.
Okay. Another question that we got here. I think we've got time for one more. Can we take one more question? Yeah, we can take one more question. This question, it's what about old platforms such as Microsoft CRM version 4 or alternative finance platforms such as Exchequer? Okay, I'm going to, I think I'll give it to Richard to answer.
So in terms of the technology stack that we have various, can work with message queues, web services, database layer. We have components that can connect straight into .NET classes or libraries and Java classes and libraries. And we also have software development kit built into the studio or the development environment, which allows you to develop a component that will communicate with such a legacy system. We also have, just to mention, very good support for AS400 or IBM I, and we have a specific component for that that can do that can leverage the AS400 or IBM I platform.
Great. I hope that that answered the question. Okay, we've just hit the top of the hour, so we're going to have to end the session here. I can tell you though that the session has been recorded, and you can view this and share this with any of your colleagues, and you will be getting a message about that. I also invite you to attend more of our webinars. I touched on some points such as mobility, so that's an area that we do provide sessions, and we will be having webinars coming up in terms of our mobile solutions as well. So keep a lookout for those. Thanks very much for attending today, and it was great spending this time, and I hope to see you again. Thanks very much.